Welcome to the Attention Deficit Disorder Expert Podcast Series by Attitude Magazine.
Hello, this is Wayne Cowan for Attitude Magazine. Today's topic is one that deeply concerns many parents: how to stop their child from being bullied. We are fortunate to have Cathi Cohen, who works with children, adolescents, and adults in a clinical setting since 1984. Cathi recognizes the power of treating relationship problems through group therapy. Cathi is the author of Raise Your Child's Social IQ and several other books. She is a leading expert in social skills training with children and has worked with many kids, ADHD and not, on how to handle bullying. Cathi will give some introductory remarks and then take your questions. Welcome, Cathi.
Hi, thank you so much, Wayne. Bullying is really one of the most painful of childhood experiences, and for the ADHD child, bullying can be especially problematic. Studies show that a majority of ADHD children struggle with bullying, either as a target, being the bully themselves, or both. ADHD kids in particular commonly exhibit a pattern of behavior that increases the likelihood of social rejection and bullying. So the most effective way of buffering your child against bullying is by helping to manage their ADHD symptoms through medical, educational, and behavioral interventions, and by acting as your child's social coach to help improve their skills. So what are the behaviors that may result in teasing or bullying? In my experience, there's one skill area more than any other that is associated with bullying, and that is the reading of social cues of peers accurately. The reason that this one is particularly troublesome is that it's so complicated. It's a threefold process. Reading cues requires a child to, number one, tune into the social world around him or her. Number two, to then interpret the social behaviors accurately. And finally, number three, to then respond appropriately to the body language and facial expression he or she sees. As you can see, this is all of these three, combined as a skill set are quite challenging for the ADHD child. There are two kinds of ADHD targets: the vulnerable target and the rejected aggressor. The vulnerable targets are the ADHD kids who may appear more sensitive, anxious, insecure. You can imagine when kids who are ADHD are getting teased a lot, they don't always understand what it's about, and so that leads to misinterpretation of the teasing. Sometimes they're misinterpreting teasing as bullying when it's really just a sort of more benign kind of teasing. And other times, kids are not seeing that they're actually being teased and bullied because they're misreading the social cues as being some kind of a pleasantry or overture in some way. Either way, these vulnerable kids are targeted. They may also overreact and become upset and tearful when being teased, which oftentimes results in more teasing. Kids who bully look for this kind of reaction, and it serves to reinforce their sense of power. The rejected aggressor, these are the ADHD kids who are typically unaware of their own roles in a bullying situation. They may impulsively escalate a situation by being provocative. Sometimes they are bullying themselves as a way to deal with their own feelings of powerlessness, and sometimes as a way to feel a sense of power in themselves. These are the kids that sort of get themselves in hot water with teachers and other adults who don't necessarily understand why the bullying is happening for them. If you feel like your child's behavior may be unwittingly contributing to his or her bullying, you're going to want to help highlight behaviors that protect them against bullying, and also sort of highlight these possible do's and don'ts of teasing. Some examples of teasing do's are: This is the first one. Tease only when you and the teaser know that you're having a good time. Sometimes you'll hear your child say, but I was only teasing, when he or she has behaved in a way that sort of brings on teasing. And this is a very good time to highlight perspective taking with your child. What do you think the other child was feeling? Was he on board with the teasing? Do you think he thought it was funny too? That way you're sort of helping to highlight for your child both sides of that equation. You know, both his awareness of teasing from other kids and also from him or herself. Another one is a teasing don't is to be aware of how others are reacting. So you are, as a parent, going to demonstrate for your child what kind of body language and facial expressions come over peers when they are, for example, annoyed. You know, their faces will change, their bodies will change. They'll say things like stop, cut it out, quit it. You know, those are things you can help your child to become more aware of so that it informs their behavior. Another one is for them to really try very hard. It's so hard for kids, but to stay calm when being teased. This is a really important one because the overreaction really can get in the way of the ceasing of the teasing or the bullying, and it can go to another level with this sort of upset. Another one that's really challenging but very possible is for your child to go with the flow of peers. And what this means is if the kids are playing a game or having a discussion, that your child learns how to go along with what the kids are doing already. So they're not sort of grabbing the ball and deciding they don't want to play kickball. Instead, they're going to be playing soccer, or they don't interrupt a conversation and change it and make it a different conversation. That would be ways to go with the flow of peers. There's a couple of don'ts that trip kids up to. And the number one that we hear about in Stepping Stones is don't tattle. It's really tough for parents and kids themselves to know the difference between tattling and telling. It's really important that when bullying is going on, that the child tells an adult. Tattling is typically motivated by more of a desire to get someone in trouble, and it's the one where somebody is trying to get somebody in trouble that usually is met with more social rejection. So that's the one that you want to really help your child figure out the difference between tattling and telling. A general rule of thumb is if your child is teased more than a couple times by the same person or group of kids, then an adult needs to be told. Another teasing don't is to not get involved in other people's business. Kids don't like that. For example, they don't like when a classmate, a child will say, hey, Jack is on page 22, and you told us we were all supposed to be on page 23. Sometimes it's helpful to go over with your child some of the things that might annoy other kids, this being one of them. So if your child is upset and tells you he or she's being teased, try using the eggnog model to gather more accurate information. Sometimes it's hard as a parent not to just jump in and react really quickly, which might either kind of rev your child up, actually, unintentionally, of course, or it might close off lines of communication. This is a parenting action plan that can be very useful if you feel your child can handle the teasing without your direct involvement. So here are the steps of eggnog. Step 1 is, and this is the letter E, empathize. Let your child know that you can tolerate his or her feelings by saying things like, I can hear you're really upset. I'm listening to you. Do a lot of kind of understanding of their feelings without jumping to questioning right away. Step 2, which is the G, is get neutral. This is when you listen without any judgment and you calmly let your child know that you're there by saying things like, tell me what happened. Okay, then what happened? Okay, what were you thinking at that time? What do you think the other person was thinking? And it sounds like it's easy, but it's really not. I think you all of you who have had children who come home upset from school and they're being bullied, it's really hard to stay neutral. You just want to start, getting very upset yourself for your child. It is very upsetting, and kids really pick up on that. And it might influence how the conversation goes. Step 3 is the N, and that is narrow. Be as specific as possible with the nature of the particular problem. So a question that you might ask to narrow is, what upsets you the most about this situation? This is particularly helpful for the child that starts to get revved up and then everything goes into the basket. First it's so-and-so is mad at them, and then it's so-and-so and so-and-so is mad at them, and then it's the whole class that hates them, and then the teachers hate them, and they can get flooded with feeling overwhelmed and upset. And when you narrow, you make it more specific, it makes it a more manageable situation, whether it be teasing or any other upsetting situation. Step 4 is the O, and that is optimize. O-P as in Paul, T-I-M-I-Z-E. This is all on my website. If you want to not write down these steps, I can email them to you as well. Remind your child that there are multiple solutions to coping with teasing. So here are a couple of toolbox methods for responding to teasing that you might want to try with your child when he or she's being teased. Number 1 is role-playing with your child how to handle the teasing. Whether it involves delivering some kind of a comeback or perfecting a dirty look and walking away, often children think they're conveying a message that they're not. For example, they may be communicating through their body language that the teaser is really getting to them. And if you take some time to role play with them, you can help them to adjust that so that they are more confident and feel stronger and feel more ready to deal with a teasing situation when it should happen. Practice posture and looking very strong. And if you are going to help your child with a comeback situation, be really careful, because there are some kids who are great with comebacks because they can always come up with another comeback and then another comeback. But there are some kids who really, once they come up with one comeback, that's all they can do. They just get frozen after that. So you want to be sure that if you do a comeback, that it's really strong and that he has an escape route after he says it, or that he's the kind of kid that can come up with a million comebacks and it's not difficult for him. Simple ones for the more quiet child, the more insecure child that we found to be effective are just a word like really and then walking away, or even, I know you all probably hate this, but whatever is a really strong and effective way of sort of communicating, if you do it right, that you don't care. Now, you might be saying to yourself right now, well, my child's tried whatever, and it really doesn't work for him. And that may be very well true. You might have to try 4 or 5 possible responses to get the one that really fits your child. But don't give up. Communicate that you have confidence in them and that they can figure out what is most comfortable, relaxed, and confident for them to use as their teasing strategy. It's really critical throughout all of this that you connect your child with children who don't tease. This may involve seeking out groups or activities outside your typical realm of operation. However, providing your child with some neutral to positive peer experiences is important for the development of your child's social functioning and for their self-esteem. And even one friend can be a huge buffer against teasing and being bullied. Now, you probably thought I forgot about the last letter of eggnog, which is G. And the last letter is get moving. And what that means is that you're going to make a plan from the strategies that we maybe just went over, or some strategies that you and your child come up with together through a brainstorming session. And you're going to end your eggnog session with, okay, it sounds like you're ready to put a plan into action. Let's check back tomorrow and see if it worked for you. And it never hurts to have a backup plan as well, because sometimes the first plan won't work, and that's okay. You can say, you can expect that. There's always another plan behind it that your child can work on. So that's what I've got for my introduction for today, and I'm really looking forward to having a discussion with you now, questions that I might be able to be helpful with.
Very good, Cathi. There are a whole range of questions here. I'll start with, she calls herself Weary Mom. Do you have any suggestions when the bullying is being done by an older sibling? Not physical bullying, but more teasing and emotional manipulation, because he knows the younger one, a child with ADHD, is so sensitive. Do you have any strategies for that?
Yes, I'm sorry about this. This is so difficult. Sibling rivalry is very normal, of course, but bullying is really taking it a step further. Even if it's not physical bullying, it still can be very destructive to the child who's being bullied and also to their relationship over time. So I think that one of the most important ways that you can address this is by representing as the mom, as the parent, that this is not how you treat each other in the family, and that you're going to sit down outside of a time where this is going on, when it's not going on, maybe at dinner or sometime on a Sunday, before school, where you sit down as a family and say, this is not how we treat each other. We treat each other with respect, and this is our expectation. Let's talk about how we can make that happen. And as a family, use the power of the family to work against that potential for bullying.
Worried Mom asks, my son confuses details about the bullying when he gets nervous. When we ask him to tell us what's going on, he will tell us different stories. We know that he's being bullied, but how do we handle getting correct info?
Yeah, this one's a toughie. One of the challenges that ADHD children face is that they frequently have difficulty sort of remembering or understanding the social sequence of a story. And so sometimes it can feel like an adult that, from an adult, that the child is lying or not telling his side of the equation. And that's actually not the case frequently. It's the ADHD child really has difficulty sort of remembering and piecing things together, especially in a sort of A plus B equals C way. First there was this that happened, and then there was this that happened, and then there was this that happened. So it makes it very difficult for the ADHD child to see their own role in a situation, if there is any role that they're taking in the situation. And it can be really difficult for you as parents to sort of get at what's actually going on here. I think that once you've gone through this sort of eggnog and you've really tried to understand as best you can what's going on, there's teasing going on, but you're not exactly sure what, I think that's when it's time to call in the troops. And what I mean by that is that's a good time to get a hold of outside sources and to help you kind of piece together what is happening. You can find out, from the school what's happening. Sometimes the teachers see these things. Frequently, the teachers are not the ones that see these things because the classroom is a more structured setting. So where you're going to get more useful information is maybe from the lunchroom, cafeteria person, because they are there and you can sort of give them a heads up that they should be looking for things, looking for kind of a bullying situation if that's what's going on at the time. The bus driver is a great ally to have. All of the unstructured times where adult supervision is at a minimum, that's when bullies usually tend to target. And so that's the time that you need as many adult allies as you can. And this will help you sort of like Rashomon. Do you remember that, where different sides of a story are told to make up a whole? I think the more information you get from various folks, including your child, the more clear it will be that you are getting an accurate picture, which will then help you develop a plan for dealing with it.
Very good. Lori has a question. Is the type of bullying in school different for girls than for boys?
Yes. Boys and girls exert control very differently. And bullying really, when you think about it, is really just about control and power. And girls tend to be socialized in such a way that they exert more in the way of relational aggression. Boys also can exhibit a fair amount of relational aggression, but it's not very frequent that girls will exhibit the physical kinds of aggressive behavior that you see with boys. With girls, and it's just as destructive, even though it's not physical, they try to control or dominate through more social exclusion. They threaten, to withdraw friendship. That you've heard this with the little kids even. I'm not going to invite you to my birthday party. They tend to give each other the silent treatment, which is really difficult to manage when you're on the receiving end of it, because nothing comes back for you to deal with. It's so passive-aggressive. Girls need ways to be able to learn how to express their anger more directly. And I think if we as a sort of society could help girls to express their anger a little bit more directly, we would probably see a little bit less of this relational aggression. But in the meantime, right now, it's a pretty dysfunctional way of expressing anger. Boys, on the other hand, are typically more, aggressive, not necessarily physically, but they can be verbally aggressive. They kind of can call you stupid, and they can say, what an idiot, that sort of thing. And then boys tend to be over it a little bit more quickly, at least on a solo basis. When they begin to get involved with ganging up, then it can be a different story with boys too. But there's a different quality of sort of sniper fire with boys that happens, and then they can be over it and done and move on, even if your child can't. And girls can kind of carry this kind of insidious kind of relational aggression to great extents, I'm afraid. It's very painful to be on the receiving end of either one, actually.
Mm-hmm. Another parent asks, how do I help my ADHD child realize that there is playful teasing and joking around, and not everyone who jokes around with him is bullying him? He had some terrible experiences with bullying, and now he thinks every joke or tease is bullying.
That's such a tough one, and it's one that's very common as well. I generally feel like if you can sort of outside the incident, when the child's not feeling really vulnerable at the time and telling you that they're being teased, but maybe at another time, it's a good time to kind of review, what qualifies, what kinds of actions would be happening that would fall under a sort of a destructive kind of teasing versus what are the kinds of teasing that are more benign. We talked a little bit before about, when you're in on the joke yourself, when you're together making jokes and laughing, that's obviously not a mean kind of teasing. That's more like a way to connect and bond kind of teasing. I think that sometimes there's some families that are not big teasers. They don't tease each other very, very much, and it might be a good time to start benignly, obviously, teasing each other, kind of jesting with each other at home, and practicing ways for your child to kind of laugh along and be able to laugh at him or herself a little bit. The ability to laugh at yourself in situations like this is so important. Kids with a sense of humor are much less likely to get bullied than kids who really take things to heart. And some of it, of course, is because there's been such an experience of negative bullying that there's a globalizing. It's sort of a self-protective phenomenon that takes place. Well, I'll stop there on that.
Okay. Jim asks, is keeping a low profile at school ever a solution to protect your ADHD child against bullying?
Yes. I think that, in short, the answer is yes, particularly as it relates to, first of all, like a new child. You can imagine if a new child comes into a school, doesn't know anyone, and you certainly don't want your child being immediately red flagged, to be a target for bullying. And maintaining a low profile can be a really good way to give that child some time to kind of ascertain what the social roads are like, which of the kids in the class look like they're kind of smiley and nice and friendly, and which are the ones that are a little bit more rough around the edges, that might be a little bit more tricky, or they might have like a sarcastic edge that might, result in some meanness that might be difficult. So I think in a situation like that, it's very helpful to maintain a low profile. I think sometimes it's hard for the ADHD child to manage some of the behaviors that come along with the ADHD. If they could, I think they would, maintain a low profile. So, in answer to your question, in short, I think that especially with new kids, maintaining that low profile and giving yourself a chance to observe is really critical.
Okay. Susan asks a question. The kid who is bullying my child is considered a nice kid by his teacher and is popular among his classmates. He does a good job of hiding his bullying behaviors, mostly verbal abuse. How do I convince the teacher that he's bullying my daughter?
That's very tricky, and frequently, unfortunately, that is sort of the profile of some bullies. There are bullies that are sort of outwardly aggressive and impulsive, and everyone knows what that bully looks like. We've seen him in movies. He's the kid that throws your child into the locker or stuffs their head in the toilet. But most bullies, or a lot of bullies, are frequently these kind of very socially savvy kids who have the teachers snowed, and so it can be very tricky. If you feel like you're not getting a response from your teacher, you're not getting sort of buy-in that your teacher is going to keep an eye out, and it may be that your teacher honestly is not seeing it because this kind of a savvy bully may not be doing it in front of the teachers. This kind of a savvy bully might be perfectly nice and kind in front of the teacher. Then I think that's the time to start to get other adults involved who may see the child in a less structured setting. And if you have a relationship with the child's parent, it might be not a bad idea to get in touch with the parent and say, hey, listen, I think we have a problem here, and I wanted to see if I could get your help on how we can get the kids back on track. So you're not going to call the parent on the phone and say, your child is a rotten bully and I want you to quit it, because you're going to get a defensive, obviously, reaction for something like that. But if you were to approach in a kind of a neutral way, just like you did with eggnog, talking to a parent about a situation that's causing your child difficulty, it really does increase the likelihood that that parent will engage with you and figure out some ways to manage her child or his child on this situation.
Mm-hmm. There are several questions about engaging the teacher, or sort of enlisting the teacher to be on your side and your child's side. Is there any sort of format or etiquette that parents should take in terms of trying to? Parent knows that the child is being bullied, but he wants, for instance, the teacher to be the eyes and ears of the classroom, and maybe to report any details that he might see. Is it ever wise to sort of go in and have a meeting with the teacher and get the teacher on your side?
Yeah, and I think it can be, sort of your goal is you're building a support system for your child. You're building a support system with his peers or her peers. You're trying to get them socially connected so they have these social buffers that they can go to when they're feeling alone and they're feeling like they're being teased. And the teacher can be one of those very important social buffers for your child. And you might just want to also be in touch with your child's guidance counselor. Typically, guidance counselors are very well-versed and they're very sensitized to bullying. And so your child could have a system, a way of talking to the guidance counselor without any of the kids knowing if that's a concern for your child. Sometimes they leave notes, underneath the door. They pick a time, when it's not noticeable, like they're certainly not getting called out of class, but they're going to like a lunch, meeting or a lunch group with the guidance counselor. So there are other sources at school besides just the teacher. I do think the teacher is an important one as well. But as I say, the teacher may not be seeing it. So, the more adults, that you feel support from, that you feel really understand your child and are really on your child's side. And I don't mean that your side against somebody else's side. I just mean on your child's side, really believes in your child, feels like your child's a wonderful kid, really wants to have him or her succeed and do well socially and academically. Those are the people that you want to encourage relationships with you and for your child.
Mm-hmm. Another mom asks, this is a tough one, my 10-year-old is a very lovely guy and tries hugging his classmates. Several of them have been calling him names. What can I do to prevent him from physically hugging classmates he likes?
Oh, yes, that's one of those traits, hugging, that we see a lot. And because when they're little guys and they're hugging and they're 4 years old and they're 5 years old, it's totally acceptable. And when they get to be, more like 9 or 10, it's just not so cool. So, that's one that your child's going to need to, kind of talk to you about, and maybe you can figure out some other ways that your child can show someone that he likes them or he feels connected to them besides getting physical, Maybe because frequently with ADHD kids, it's that they don't know what to do, they sort of only are told what not to do, and then that can be, difficult to translate into behavior. So maybe if you were to, role play with your child and work on some other ways that you can show kids that you like them, do you want to hang out? Do you want to play a game? A compliment, I really like your whatever, or somebody says that they got this new video game and you say things like, oh, that's cool, or, those are ways that you show people that you like them. You show interest, you listen, you get excited when they're excited, you kind of match. This is part of that social cue thing. You're matching your response with their response.
One parent asked, what about when a bully's comments eventually cause a child to doubt herself or feel bad about herself? How can I help her feel good about herself after all the bullying?
You can't imagine how important it is that your children have you. They have you to come home to. They have you signing up for webinars to find out how to help them. And so being yourself and being their social support, the ones they come home to, is the most self-esteem building option for you. You are their rocks. You don't change your perceptions of them no matter what happens. And that's something that is filtered into your child without your even needing to say the right thing or do the right thing. I think sometimes it's helpful for you to work with your child on their sort of thoughts about themselves, help them to kind of think realistic thoughts about themselves, because if the voices of the bullies become their voices, that's when it's difficult, which it sounds like you're sort of saying here. So you want to make sure that they have a voice within their own head that is more realistic. If a bully, for example, says, you're really stupid, which is a common one, that you and your child figure out ways for your child to say to herself or himself, I know that that's really not true. I'm actually really smart. I do well in school, or I really enjoy reading, or I am a really super good video gamer, or whatever that their particular strengths or competencies are, that they're able sort of, through you're sort of lending them your ego to some degree because of your thoughts about them, and then eventually they're able to tell themselves how they accurately need to see themselves.
So consciously try to build their strengths as well, or let them show off their strengths at home, maybe to counteract all that negative chatter?
Oh, yes, absolutely. Areas of competency, building areas of competency.
One parent wants to know if there are any books that a teacher can read to a class that addresses bullying, basically to help everybody understand, not the ADHD child, but everyone, so to sort of reduce the incidence of bullying. Do you have any of those in mind?
Yes. On my website, which is insteppc.com, there is a resource section on the top sort of line, and it says recommended reading. And under the recommended reading, there's recommended reading for you parents and also for the kids to be able to read on various kinds of social dilemmas and conflicts, one of which is bullying. So take a look at that, and there's some cute ones out there right now. And I think
any that you would recommend by name, or
oh gosh,
the website?
I would check I could check the website right now if we're on the phone, but it might not be the best use of my time. Right. But there's a bunch. I mean, there's a whole bunch of parenting books and also books for kids.
Mm-hmm. One mom asks, my 12-year-old has a temper and handles bullying by physically fighting the bully. Both have been suspended for a couple of days. How can I talk with my son to get him to realize that fighting won't solve anything?
Yeah, that's a hard one, and particularly for your child who's ADHD, the impulsivity is a sometimes can result in more aggressive behavior. That is a really good time to work on more proactive problem solving with them, kind of not just after the fact, but preceding different, social situations, being able to practice good problem solving skills, to really draw up a plan, sometimes writing down some other routes to dealing with teasing can be very helpful, because as I say before, sometimes it's just the first response, the impulsive response, is the easiest one, but it may not be the best one. And if your child is like a lot of ADHD kids, it's really hard for them to think of that second one or that third reaction. The first one is just so easy, and it's right at their fingertips, so to speak. So your job is to sort of work on expanding their repertoire of ways to cope with the teasing. And as they become more comfortable with this expanded repertoire of coping, they're going to not just go to that fallback number one, aggression, but they're going to be able to use other methodologies for handling teasing, and to be able to review with them as well what the short-term consequences of responding in an aggressive way and the long-term consequences of responding in an aggressive way compared to responding in other ways to deal with being bullied. The long-range consequences of dealing in aggressive ways is usually not very pretty, and so it helps if your child gains awareness, but also adeptness at using other ways to respond, and you give them a lot of credit when they're able to do it, because it requires a whole lot of self-control and a whole lot of work to do something that's sort of against what you typically do, and is kind of ingrained and a habit.
Would this be an opportunity for some heavy role playing at home? Maybe even inviting the sibling in to be the bully, and the parents sort of supervising the whole experience? I
think that's a great idea, Wayne. A great idea. I think kids generally really like role playing. They particularly like playing the role of the bully, which is totally fine. Allowing them to play the role of the bully, and then you or a sibling playing the role of the target. And they get to sort of see and model after the different ways that you're handling it, and allowing them to sort of choose which one feels right to them.
What happens when your ADHD child is the bully? How does a parent handle that?
Well, it's really, really critical that, first of all, that you take it really seriously, because for a couple different reasons. Being a bully is very concerning for other people, of course, but it also really hurts themselves. Bullies can get locked into sort of a pattern of aggressive behavior that they use to solve their problems, and behavior like that sort of it instills fear in other people, but it doesn't. Fear and sort of compliance and cooperation doesn't mean that they're necessarily liked or other kids feel connected to them. So it's a situation where you really want to take reports of bullying very seriously, and begin really working very hard with your child on practicing those good problem-solving skills, where you're figuring out other solutions to problems besides aggressive behavior. Bullies tend to not be able to see very well or feel very well the feelings of other people. So a lot of work on perspective taking, even when you're watching movies or seeing television shows, that you're asking questions all the time about what do you think that person felt when that happened, why do you think that person did that, constantly trying to encourage empathy from your child who's bullying. Kids who empathize tend to not to bully as much. And then really it's important to encourage them at as early an age as possible, and this is the case with all kids, that, particularly for kids who are prone to bullying, is to encourage them to express themselves with words. So if they're feeling angry, like we talked about with girls earlier, and with boys too, that they express their anger with words. I'm feeling because, I'm upset when this happens, versus lashing out, grabbing things, pushing, some kind of an aggressive response instead. And working a lot on developing give and take in relationships, just one relationship at a time. The other thing that I think can be really helpful for kids who are prone to bullying is to have them volunteer, to do some kind of community service, something where they're actually doing something for the greater good, working with people to help people, because it feels good to help others, and it also increases empathy to do that.
What do you do when the teachers are the teasers or bullies? A gym teacher, say, or an art teacher. How does the parent address that?
I think that's one, if you really feel like there's some bullying going on, I think that's when you get the guidance counselor involved, possibly the assistant principal. Frequently the assistant principal is the one that takes on that layer of work. But I don't think you should be shy about expressing your concerns about your child, especially if you've already gone to the teacher that you're feeling is not handling things well. You've already, had a sort of a nice conversation. You've already expressed what your concerns are. You've already expressed what you are observing, and you don't feel like you're getting much in the way of response. That's when you need to start getting your other supports that you've put in place at the school to help you out. Wayne, can I just interrupt you for 1 second? I don't know that we've so I didn't say anything about cyberbullying.
Yeah, that was my last question. So go ahead.
Oh, good. I just wanted to quickly say that there's, cyberbullying is challenging, and it's a whole afternoon's presentation on itself. But there are a couple things that you can do to lessen the chances that your child will be a target of cyberbullying. Number one is that you can reduce your child's overall screen time exposure, because this, of course, if you're on it less, it lessens your chance that bullying can happen. Keep your computer in the open at home, where you can you don't have to stand over your child's shoulder and, talk about what's going on the screen. You want to give your child some privacy, but you also want to sort of let them know that you can just, pass by and you see what's going on, and that you can tell if something hostile is happening there. Let your child know that you'll be periodically checking in on their friends list and their web page history, and don't listen to them when they say that nobody's parents do that. No, Mom, I'm not going to give you my password. This is what other kids do. It may be, but it's not what you're doing, and your rule is what's right for you. And get your child's usernames. Check your child's profiles, web pages, blogs, anything like that. And then really try to help your child develop good etiquette online, so that your child isn't responding in a hostile way or a sarcastic way to other kids when, that they're not provoking in any way. And so you're really discouraging any kind of retaliation online from your child. If your child knows the offender is from school, that's one of those other times that it's really, important to get school personnel involved. And if you know the child and you can solicit help from the cyber bully's parents, whenever possible, approaching other parents, becoming a sort of support system for each other is ideal for dealing with any kind of bullying, actually.
Okay, very good. We will have to end it there. Thanks very much, Cathi, for such a helpful, informative webinar.
My pleasure.
Thanks, Cathi. Have a good day, everyone.
For more Attitude podcasts and information on living well with attention deficit, visit attitudemag.com. That's ADDITUDEMAG.com.